Hello! Today in our video we are going to work on creating a fantastic 172 scale Sherman model from the UniModel company. Before we dive into the review and assembly, let's take out all the parts from the box. Wow, that's cool! Now let's take a closer look to the details in this kit to help those who are considering buying it. I am not sponsored by UniModels, but I would like. The parts in this kit are quite well made, also some processing will be needed. It's important to note that there are plenty of small details in this kit, which will add more detail to the model. There are also several variations available to the Sherman with the different modifications. However, there are also some downsides, including the plastic track, which are a bit challenging to work with for me. I didn't encounter any issue with the other parts. Also, even with the instruction, it can sometimes be unclear where to attach them. Please note that this video won't cover the detailed assembly, I will only focus on the moments that seem difficult and important to me. Additionally, I will talk about what new things I will add to this model. Alright, let's get started. This time the assembly didn't take as much time, and the problems occurred where I expect them. I had to fully assemble the tank track, which might pose some issues during painting, but we'll think about it in the future. Right now I will start creating mud guard from thick foil that I recently bought in the supermarket. This material seemed very good to me because it holds its shape, and it's suitable for modification to fit my needs. The process isn't complicated, but it requires attention and patience, especially in 172 scale, where the details are very small. After processing, the result is a detail, but unfortunately this modification will be redone in the future due to missed parts. Still, I must admit that the result turned out quite good. So let's move on to the next modification. It turns out all the additional ring and brackets in the kit are made of plastic. Personally, this option doesn't suit me, as it's not only unreliable but also unattractive. However, if you use a hand drill to create few holes and replace the plastic rings and bracket with the metal wire, the result will be simply stunning. After all, high-quality addition parts significantly improve the appearance of the model. Therefore, I decided to replace all the plastic bracket with metal ones. After that, I returned to create mud guards. In principle, I am doing the same thing as before, but adding an additional detail. This small foil plate. This part just must be on the mud guards, and I will need this detail for connection special cargo shelf, if I name this thing right. Overall, the modification turned out to be very successful, and I hope it will give my model the appearance of the combat vehicle, rather than just a new tank fresh off the assembly line. After adding this modification, I thought it would be good to add locks on the side of the tank hull. I decided to make this part out of plastic, as I still have plenty of frames from previous model. Thank you Night Shift for the idea. These materials are perfect for simulating locks, but first they needed to be given a wood texture. A regular kitchen knife for the fruits and vegetables with a fine saw is a perfect tool for this task. However, to make the logs look neater, they needed to be processed with a modeling knife. This gave an excellent result, even better than real wood logs. But to attach these logs to the tank, I'll need some metal wire. The same kind I used for the brackets. From this wire I also make a rope. But this is the last time I am using this material. Not only holds paint poorly, but also doesn't look as realistic as the real rope. It would be better to go to the fishing store and buy sturdy rope. Unfortunately, I have to work with what I have. So I decided to use foil strip for another modification. My idea was to weld a few strips on each side of the tank to create a place for attaching the logs. For example, some tank crew or mechanics create this idea. In my opinion, this solution looks more interesting and doesn't deviate too much from the original model idea. As a result, it turned out very cool. Rough logs are attached to the tank body with all the rusty ropes. It's not painting yet, but I already imagine how it will look. The idea sounds in my head and I intend to implement it. But before moving on to the next stage, I want to praise the company and those who created this kit. They added special molds that help correctly bend photo-etched parts. It's truly amazing, I never saw something like that. Bravo UniModels, bravo Mr. Modeler which creates this kit. But enough with the price, it's time for another modification. Now I need to attach a wooden plank made from plastic sheet to the front part of the tank. After shaping this detail I started processing it. All I need for this was a modeling knife and an old blade to cut the necessary shapes and strips at the plastic. But be careful with the knife, you can wound yourself. But thankfully I don't do it with myself. And I think the result is quite satisfactory for the 1/72 scale. So I added a few support blocks and glued the detail to the tank. The model is ready. Now I'm moving on creation various stowage that will be mounted on this tank. The first item is a milk can, made from a plastic frame. After creating the basic shape using my hand drill, I cut out and sanded the lid from plastic. Then I added wire handle, installed it using a hand drill. Just a few dozen minutes of work and I have a nice additional detail. Of course, if you have a 3D printer, you can easily print similar details. Unfortunately, I don't have one, so I am waiting to receive such parts from another city. But let's get back to the Sherman. Again, using leftover plastic frames and a lighter. By the way, be careful when working with fire. Using the lighter, I stretch the plastic and create a semblance of a rope. This method allows me to attach all items to the tank, and it looks quite natural. All that's left is to add the final detail, a piece of paper soaked in PVA glue to simulate a tarpaulin. But I made a mistake by using the wrong material. It would have been better to use baking paper, but I decided to use toilet paper, and it's quite not good material. But unfortunately I realized this too late. After adding the tarpaulin, I moved on to priming the model. I didn't show the entire model before priming, because I believe that a primed model will look better and convey all my intentions. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the result after priming. I lack words to describe how pleased I am with this work. Already at this stage, my enthusiastic inspiration and the thought that this is my best model have deeply rooted in my mind. But let's move on to painting. Since I don't have the exact color I need, I decided to mix it using Soviet World War II green and flat earth. It creates an olive color with slight hint of brown. This is the color I wanted to achieve for this tank. So I see no reason to delay painting. We all know that the first base coat is applied without any additional problem, and this model is no exception. But this is the last model where I want to use pre-shading. After watching several videos with this method, I wanted to try something similar. However, since I am novice in this, I decided not to take risks. So I used my usual method and added a bit of Dectan color to the base paint to create some lighter spots. Don't worry if the model looks too white. This effect will change a bit later. For now the model looks like this. Then I made the base color more saturated and applied many dots of this color all over the model to diversify the base color of the tank. The first detail was the tarpaulin. I didn't want it to be too bright, because it takes up a very large part of the model, and if it's too bright, it distracts attention from the tank itself. Based on this consideration, the tarpaulin was painted in a light olive color. Then, to give the tarpaulin an old and worn look, I highlighted the edges and bend of the tarpaulin with lighter paint. Considering the poor texture of the paper I choose, it turned out quite well, especially if you don't look too closely. Now it's time to paint the various tools placed on the tank hull. For the wooden parts I choose the color chocolate brown and German pale brown. I think these are suitable colors for simulating wooden parts. Perhaps there are more suitable colors for this task, but I don't have them in my arsenal. So I'm using what's available. After applying the base color, I create a lighter shades and apply it to the top of the tools to show light wear. This tank isn't old, so I don't want to make it look rusty, and accordingly I won't paint the tool in olive color. Also, I know this option looks realistic, but I prefer more color variety on my model. I painted the metal parts of the tools in a dark grey color. In my opinion, these tools haven't had enough time to rest, so they only have slight wear marks indicating their use. Of course, you, dear viewers, will evaluate the result of this work, so be sure to share your opinion in the comment under this video. Thank you. The next details are the wooden crate, which needs to be painted in a light wood color, and the locks attached to the side of the tank hull. This is only the first stage of painting the locks. In this video I want to show a method of painting locks that will try to convey the appearance of tree bark in 1/72 scale, and this method doesn't require too much time. After applying the first light color I use chocolate brown, and you can see how the light color shines through the cracks. This effect can be seen on the pine tree in a real forest. After this stage I use an even darker shades, which turn our lock into something like Dalmatian with lots of dark chaotic spots. Then I use a light color again, and add another layer of spots on top of previous one. The result is oddly colored wood, but after applying the dry brushing technique it acquires a more pleasing appearance. This wood doesn't require additional weathering, unless of course you decided to cover it in dirt. From up close it may look strange, but after applying a light wash and moving the model to a viewing distance, the result will be beautiful. Of course, I could have simply applied the base color and then used the dry brushing technique, but then the effect of various spots on the tree bark would have been lost. I think this method is quite a good option, also it requires some refinement. Unfortunately, I didn't notice that my camera was off, so off camera I simulated the rope in those colors. The rope on the back of the tank was processed using a similar method, and at this stage we have a model that look like this. But isn't it time for another mistake? Well, now in fast forward mode you are watching how the Sherman model is destroyed using a wash made from oil paint. Don't worry, I'm just kidding. The model isn't being destroyed. Almost everything is done correctly, and any serious issues will be fixed shortly. This wash blends beautifully and creates very cool shading and weathering effect, all in one bottle. Just look at this beauty. Doesn't it look cool? Almost all the details are painted in the right color, so now we can confidently move on to applying various damage, such as scratch, chips and rust. Don't worry, fans of pristine vehicle, you won't see much rust here. But before applying the damages, we need to lighten the dark wash color a bit, using the base olive color and the dry brushing technique. I will speed up this process to make the difference more noticeable. Now I am applying fresh scratch, chips and abrasions using light paint. This method gives the model a more varied and pleasing appearance, as well as aiding volume. The power of this effect is immediately noticeable. And just look, once you add the dark wash, then apply abrasions and a few chips, your model will look interesting. Dare I say professional. The same action are performed for the tank turret. I think here we can make the transition between effect more pronounced to make the turret truly voluminous. All that's left is to add the smell of gunpowder and oil, and we will get a 4D effect. Actually, if you don't apply rust, you could leave this model as it is, and that will be quite enough for 1/72 scale. But I think a little rust won't hurt this tank at all. So I proceed very carefully and gently apply rust, where, in my opinion, it should appear first. Rust is applied at almost all sharp edges and protruding parts. Where I overdid it with rust, I simply use the color I used for abrasions, and the rust effect is slightly muted. Overall, I applied very little rust. As I said at the beginning of the video, tank isn't old and hasn't seen combat, but it has certainly traveled over various terrains, so rust didn't require a lot of time. Now it's time for the longest and final stage of painting this tank Sherman, the tank track. But actually I don't have too much to say. First I painted the truck in black to give them a factory look. When I done this stage, I use orange wash, simulating rust, and apply another wash, of a dark shade. These two washes will do their job perfectly. Just look at the result. This is rusty track, and this track look cool. Next I start weathering. Dry pigment mixed with acrylic paint is applied to the truck in liquid form, just like the previous washes. After this step, I do a slight weathering on the entire tank running gear. There won't be too much dirt on my future diorama, but small splashes of mud always add realism. While the acrylic paint is still drying, I need to remove excess effect a little using plain water and a brush. Then I apply a few more splashes and move on to the final touch. Before applying silver paint to the tank track, I decided to use mixture of my favorite color. Oil paint Van Dyke Brown. This will give the dirt a darker shade and fix the dry pigment. In the end, despite of my doubts, the model turned out really good. All that's left is to add a bit of silver paint to the areas that constantly contact the ground. And then the model can be considered finished. I hope you didn't waste your time watching this video and learning something new, or simply enjoy the viewing. If so, please give this video a thumb up, write what you liked, didn't like this work, and for those who want to support the development of this channel and help me with purchasing figures, models, and of course receive my 3D modeling for 3D printing, there is link to my Patreon in the description of this video. With that, I bid you farewell, until we meet again, my friends.